Today, I'm actually reviewing the 2025 Haval H7, a big and bold SUV with a bargain price. But just as important as focusing on what you do get for your cash with this car is what it doesn't include.
Haval is the SUV sub-brand of the Chinese car giant GWM, and the H7 is the latest addition to a rapidly growing family which now extends to 4 models, or 6 if you include the tank off-roaders. The first generation H7 arrived in Australia in 2018 and struggled to make much of an impression, but the new version bears virtually no resemblance, with an unapologetic exterior design and a small hybrid engine replacing the previous 2-litre turbo. It goes up against other reasonably priced SUVs from challenger brands such as the Chery Tiggo 7, the JQ J7 and SsangYong Torres.
For now, there is just one H7 available, the Vanta. It gets lots of technology, a boxy off-road design and a hybrid powertrain for a bargain $47,000 drive away. There's just one option available, posh paint, which will cost you about another $500, very reasonable. Beyond that, everything else is included in the price. What you see is what you get. Now, despite that very boxy off-road design that may or may not have been influenced by a Jeep Renegade, this car is only available as a front-wheel drive. There is no all-wheel drive option available.
A 7-year warranty is offered on all new Haval models, which is relatively long, while 5 years of cap price service is also locked in at purchase, totaling about $2,200, which is pretty reasonable.
In addition to that doubtless inspiration from the Jeep Renegade, there might even be a little bit of Ford Mustang in that centre grille there. Either way, this is trying to be a blend of lots of different things, including more Jeep inspiration in these plastic wheel arch extensions, which are fixed not by real bolts, but by fake ones. You also get a 19-inch wheel as standard for more of the off-road look. So this car is trying to make me believe it's something it's not, and that extends under the skin as well as on the surface.
Perhaps one of my favourite things about the H7 is its name in China, Big Dog. A lot of people say Haval should introduce that hilarious name locally too, but let's be honest, that would be a silly idea.
A 1.5 litre engine might sound a bit puny under the bonnet of a Hulk like this, but that little 4-cylinder petrol has 2 secret weapons. 1 is a turbo and 2 is a hybrid electrical power system. And that means quite respectable outputs of 179 kilowatts and 530 newton meters. Unfortunately, it sends it all to the front wheels only via what Haval calls a 3-speed dedicated hybrid transmission. There's a lot of cars you jump in these days, especially from challenger brands, that feel as though they're putting way too much emphasis on the technological, the screens, and they've kind of neglected the rest of the cabin. The same cannot be said of the Haval H7, and it's probably kind of gone a bit too much in the other direction. What is going on in this cabin? There is a lot happening. I don't really know where to start, so let's just dive in. Materials, generally speaking, not bad quality, but it's just the choice of them in terms of, like, there's a lot of fake stuff. What is it with all the fake stuff? Fake carbon fiber here, fake horrible chrome on everything, fake Torx head screws. They are not fooling anyone. And I think it'd be very embarrassing if I tried to actually put a driver in them and turn them. So I know what Haval's trying to do here. They're trying to take a leaf out of Jeep's book again and make it a very rugged and kind of functional appearing interior, but I'm afraid they haven't really succeeded very much in that regard. It looks like they've tried to throw so many materials at it to make it look durable and rugged, and it hasn't really worked as intended. The other things that don't work so well, the steering wheel is adjustable in 2 axes, so you've got that and that, but like if you put the steering wheel down where I want it to be, it obscures half the digital display, and it doesn't really extend out far enough towards me, so I end up having to compensate by putting my seat a little bit closer, which is electrically adjustable, thankfully. And then the seat position itself, it just sort of feels like I'm sat a bit low, but then when I put the seat high up, it's wrong relative to everything else. So ergonomically, it's not quite right. But there is other good stuff to talk about. So storage, there is quite a lot in the door pockets, this lovely big space underneath the center console, a lovely big storage bin with a lift out shelf in there, heaps of space. And then you also get a little shelf above the glove box and space for one wireless charging device there. I'm marking it down because ahead of that wireless charging pad, technologically advanced, there's a USB-A charging socket, and there's no USB-Cs in this car as far as I've found yet. So it's like, there's a few things where it just feels like it's got one foot in the past. And I think that's kind of a shame. Digital displays, absolutely no criticism there whatsoever. 14.6 inch central touchscreen and a 10.3, I think it is, for the driver's instrument cluster. And it also bolsters that whole offering with a head-up display as well. So there's definitely no shortage of technology. It does commit the ultimate central touchscreen scene, which is they have put the entire climate control system in there with only these buttons here. You only get fan speed, the air speed, that's the only thing you get outside, with everything else digitally in the screen. Beyond that though, it is quite a spacious cabin. I've got a full length, huge panoramic sunroof, which is included in the price. If you watch my LX600 video, you'll know that that doesn't get one, money or not, you just get a tiny one. So finding that feature in this car is a bit of a good selling point. Space generally is pretty good. I've got heated seats for the front row, lots of technology, lots of comfort features. Even on a day like today, press of a button on the steering wheel, I've got a heated steering wheel, which is great. So there's a lot of comfort things. I just feel like the execution of a cabin trying to sort of do more of the off-road thing, which of course, as we know, it can't do. So it's a bit of a charlatan. It's a little bit, it's trying to pretend to be something it isn't. But a lot of people won't care. A lot of people just like, you've got lots of digital offerings, loads of toys to play with, lots of switches and buttons. Maybe you even like the fake Torx head screws. I don't know. I certainly don't, but let me know in the comments below. At the center of the digital proposition, there is this huge 14.6 inch touch screen. It looks fantastic. It's got really, really great sharp graphics, nice illumination, good resolution, and it seems to refresh quite fast as well. One thing I really like about this home screen, that's where we're going to start, is it's a little bit customizable. So if you want to have these tiles in different locations, you can move them around and customize how it looks. You can also import other tiles to customize that home screen exactly as you want it. One thing you can't put in there is navigation. This car doesn't have native navigation, but if you pair a phone via Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, then you can use your own navigation system in there. There are a couple other screens which I want to show you. This one here, which tells you where all your power is going, whether it be petrol or electrical. And there's this feature which is quite cool. You can look at how you've been splitting the use of petrol and electrical power. So, and you can do that over up to a month to just see what your general usage is. And it's quite interesting with a car like this. It does have a reasonable sized hybrid battery. So as you can see, you can spend a fair amount of time relying on only that at lower speeds. It can't work as a pure plug-in hybrid. It doesn't have up to 30 Ks like some do, but as you can see, you can actually spend a reasonable amount of time in just electrical energy. One thing I don't really like is you've got all of your music options in here, USB, Apple CarPlay, Android, or whatever, but the radio is in its own complete window. When you put that all in the same one, if you listen to music, you want kind of it all in the same place. I'm not sure why that decision was made. And then finally, we've just got a couple of bits you can look around the car. It's very customizable, but a few of the functions that maybe you'd prefer on a Switch, if you're going to be swapping drivers a fair bit, would make more sense. Climate control is all in the central touch screen. I've got all the functions in there. Actually, one thing I've realized, it's not that difficult to get to. You don't have to go through these little tiles on the side here. If you just change the fan speed, it will bring up that window. So it's kind of a shortcut by using the little fan speed switch here. And then you've got all your different functions for changing where the air is coming out of the vents. I can even access my heated steering wheel through there, or a dedicated button which is customizable on the steering wheel. It works really nicely. As I say, the touch sensitivity and accuracy is very good. So once you're in that screen, it works fine. I just would prefer it all to be its own dedicated panel outside of the touch screen. Speaking of screens, we have another large one, more than 10 inches for the driver's instrument cluster. It's a little bit customizable, but it matches this one really nicely. Some cars I've driven recently, the driver's cluster looks like it's made by a completely different supplier and loaded with completely different graphics. This one, it pairs up really nicely. It looks really cohesive. And then the one thing which makes it really unusual in this vehicle is this strange third screen above that driver's instrument cluster. And as far as I can tell, all it does is, its only purpose in life is to show you which selection of the gears you're in, whether it's in park or drive. It doesn't do anything else. It seems like a bit of a wasted opportunity. Speaking of which, may as well just finish on some of the drive modes you have. There are various ones starting in normal mode, but I will just shut up as I scroll through them all because they all make a nice little tune. So even if you're not looking at the display or the dial, you can tell which one you're in by its little jingle. That's sport, Snow mode, sounds like the start of Madonna's Lucky Star. Eco mode. And normal. So I think we'll stay in normal for now, but I'll scroll through some of those when we're out on the road.
A reversing camera offers a really excellent quality image and wide field of view, but the graphics can be misleading, with more or less space suggested than is actually there. The H7 features a comprehensive range of safety technology and equipment, including 7 airbags, adaptive cruise control and autonomous emergency braking, and lane keep assistance. However, it's not yet been rated by ANCAP.
In the second row of the Haval H7, there is lots of space. I know this car is technically a mid-sizer, but it feels like it's bordering on large SUV when you look at how much room I've got back here. Loads of knee room, really nice support for the lower leg. I always mention that because I got quite long legs, and that's the first thing I noticed being a tall person. Headroom, also masses of room there, and I've also got nice comfort features like a really good solid center armrest with cup holders. And also, speaking of cup holders, there are these lovely ones in the door which you get in the front doors for bottles, and they've actually got like a little adjustable strap for holding a variety of sizes in there. They won't rattle regardless of what size they are, so it's a clever feature, that. Heaps of tow room. The seats themselves are not adjustable, but they've actually picked a really nice, comfortable, ergonomic position. I think the rear seats are actually probably a nicer place to be than the fronts in this car. More of that chunky design, including those pistol grip kind of door handles and unfortunately the fake carbon fibre and fake chrome. You do get these nice little sun blinds though. But for all the good of tall people it is in the back here, it's actually not a very good place for smaller people, because look how high that window line is there. As a small person, you'd struggle to see out of that window. So yes, there's lots of space if you want to carry things and people, but more focused for the larger people. No climate control panel of its own, but there is a USB-A power socket back here, just one, like the front, and you do get your own vents. So it's a good, spacious place with lots of comfort, but not a lot in the way of technology or high-tech stuff. You do get your own little LED reading light here, but beyond that, that's about as much technology you get in the second row here. USB-A, it's a comfortable place, it's got lots of space, but it doesn't have quite the amount of tech that the front row does. Access to the boot is via a standard electric tailgate, and once you get in there you will find 483 litres of space, which is okay for a car of this size. Others do better. The RAV4, for example, has a bigger boot exceeding 500 litres. If you fold the rear seats, it will expand to about 1,360 litres, which is pretty good as well. But I think I know why this boot doesn't have quite as much space as some others in the class. Others, including the Toyota RAV4, you lift the boot floor and there's other places to put things, and you can lower the shelf and make a bit of a versatile space. Lift the boot floor in this one though, and it's just plastic and things. I don't really understand what's going on, because they've actually deliberately filled up useful space with expanding foam, and the battery for the car is in the middle and the hybrid battery is also there. I feel like there could have been a much better use of space under the boot floor. And one other thing you won't find in there is a spare wheel of any size. There's the horrid mobility inflator kit. So once again, if this car's trying to be an off-roader, it doesn't have a spare wheel, it's not doing a very good job of convincing me. With an energetic little hybrid powertrain and front-wheel drive, I was hoping the H7 might be like a little warm hatchback to drive, but unfortunately, that's not entirely true. And that's mostly to do with the fact that this car weighs over 1.8 tons, which is a lot. For a car that doesn't have all-wheel drive, where's the extra weight? It doesn't have a huge battery, but this car weighs a lot and it affects pretty much every element of the way it drives. Performance is actually quite respectable, and that's mostly thanks to the electrical part of the hybrid powertrain, which adds 300 Newton meters of torque for the total of over 500. And it comes in instantly. As soon as you get that foot in, there's a really nice surge of instant torque, and then the petrol engine comes in behind a couple seconds later and assists if you still need a bit more oomph. It works really nicely. I'm not really sure what the transmission is in this car. It behaves a bit like a CVT, and I suspect that's what it is, and Haval just has their kind of in-house name for the transmission. It sort of drones and holds the certain RPM because it's trying to charge a battery at the same time as actually drive the wheels. But what I have to say is it's difficult to tell what kind of transmission it is because it's very hard to hear the engine or any of the transmission in function. So I'd say that's a tick. However, what I can also hear is a lot of wind noise around this window. It sounds like the window's not closed properly or like there's damage to the seal, but it doesn't appear to be either. The steering is light and the front end is actually pretty obedient to steering inputs, but it's certainly no performance SUV. When you get stuck into a couple of corners, there's a surprising amount of grip. It will roll over because it sits so high and the suspension is relatively soft, but it's actually got a certain amount of driving enjoyment at speed. Oh, and there you see another of this car's problems. Because it only has 2 driven wheels and is trying to move around 1.8 tons, that's a lot of inertia. The reason so many cars these days are all-wheel drive is not just for outright traction, it's because 4 wheels are a far better way of moving a lot of mass. And this car has a lot of mass, but it's only got front wheel drive, and what you just saw then was it trying to spin a wheel with only partial throttle. It does that an awful lot in this car. It's really struggling to find traction even when the roads are dry and the conditions are pretty favourable. And the other element we need to talk about is braking. So it tries to do a fair bit of regenerative braking under the first bit of pedal travel, and then there's real hydraulic brakes, discs, pads, all coming in after that. But then it seems to almost back off, like it's decided you were braking too aggressively. So then you have to increase the brake pressure, and then it gets all the worse and it compounds the problem, and it's very difficult to brake smoothly in this car. The problem gets all the worse at low speeds. When you're trying to pull up to a stop, it'll anchor on the brakes really aggressively with so much grab, and then you'll have to back off so you don't stop really abruptly and make all your passengers feel sick. It is quite difficult to drive this car smoothly, both at speed and at low speed, all thanks to that brake pedal. And there's no need for that, because as we've seen in many plug-in hybrids, hybrid vehicles, mild hybrids, regenerative braking can be really nice and subtle and blends really well with natural braking. But this car seems to be sort of stuck in the past a little bit. The one thing that I do really need to give it credit for is the ride quality is actually very nice, but it doesn't compromise all the suspension dynamics. It's quite firm at times, but also comfortable. And it almost feels like, even though I know this car hasn't, it feels like it might have been developed in Australia for Australian conditions. Now, although GWM has definitely started doing that, I don't think this is one of the cars that came under the focus. Now, although the performance is actually quite reasonable, the throttle response does not match up. It's quite sluggish. There is the instant response of the electrical part, but the petrol engine takes longer to decide what it's going to do. And that transmission doesn't help matters either. It all sort of takes a little while to decide what's going on and what I actually really wanted to ask of it. And it can feel a bit frustrating if you're in a bit of a hurry or just trying to have fun at the wheel. We should also talk about the fuel consumption, because although Haval claims this car will do into the 5s litres per 100 kilometres, today we have not been getting that. Right now it's saying after resetting I'm getting 8.9 litres per 100 kilometres, or after the start this particular trip 8.1. So nowhere near, I'm afraid, the claim. That said, I do have to say that over the days I've been driving this car trying to get used to it, it was doing in the 6s with a little bit more freeway open road driving. So it can be a lot better, but still not really on that very impressive and perhaps too good to be true figure of 5 point something. The turning circle is also not great. It's more than 12 meters, which is pretty big. I mean, I know this is a largish mid-sized car, but even so, there are others that do a lot better. If you're going to be using this car in suburbia, then you'll definitely feel that. But we should talk about perhaps my least favorite element of this vehicle, the Haval H7. And yes, you've probably guessed it, it's our old friend, driver assistance systems. There are too many beeps and bongs. It's not the worst by any means, but we have a driver monitoring camera here which watches my eye direction, my face. It can tell if I'm drowsy, tell if I'm paying attention, but it just doesn't work half the time. Sometimes I'll be blatantly doing something like checking my script, for example, or I could be paying complete attention and then it will just tell me I'm apparently not paying any attention at all, when I clearly absolutely am, I promise. But it's actually not the worst system of all in this car. That accolade has to go down to the lane keep assistance system, which is just awful. I'm sorry, you can be driving along on a perfectly normal road, dead straight, easy to see line markings, and it will just grab at the wheel as if you're changing lanes without any kind of warning. And then other times I'll allow it to drift to the center of the road just to see what it'll do, and it makes no attempt to try and steer me back in lane. There you go, it allowed me to just cross over the middle of the road. Absolutely should be doing a better job than that. In fact, it's so bad, on a couple of occasions, it's torn the steering wheel out of my hand and then had to compensate for its own steering input because it steered so wildly off in the wrong direction the other way. So I'm sorry, there is a lot of work to do with these driver assistance systems. Right now, they're of no benefit to anyone at all. This car can actually be quite good fun on a road. If you can keep some momentum going, get into that nice responsive front end, it actually has a fair bit of grip and fun to offer. But I suppose I'm sort of overall a bit disappointed because Haval and GWM, generally speaking, have made such great progress in their vehicles in recent years. This one seems to be a bit of a departure from that. Let's just hope it's a blip. The Haval H7 is a really interesting car, and if you only looked at its brochure, you'd probably think it's exceptional value for money. To an extent, it is. However, its transmission can't keep the promises made by its exterior design, and its on-road manners don't really redeem it either. But if you like its certain resemblance to a certain 7-slot grille model, then be my guest. It's still a very affordable soft-roader with plenty of space that you definitely won't go camping with. This is the Haval H7, a mid-size SUV with all the looks of a capable off-roader, but none of the ability. Does it matter? Can you forgive it for its exceptional $47,000 driveway price? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching Car Sales.